What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Lesser Athletes. My name is Chadwell, and today, like always, an interesting video for you here on the channel. Today is Saturday night's main event predictions for July 2025. Now, gotta be honest with you, this one's a weird one for me. I'm a little interested on this one because, in my opinion, it's a little interesting. There's only 3 matches that have been announced. 2 of them are feuds. One of them's a championship match. No women on the card because ultimately they will be on Evolution. I don't know what's going to happen for this card, and I think the reason why there's no story, nothing being built, or nothing just stuff getting just thrown onto the card is because ultimately so much stuff that happened with Night Champions and Evolution that they had to kind of hurry stuff up. So I wonder what will happen. I wonder what will go down. But today we're going to talk about possible stuff that could happen because there's no way that it's a 3-card match unless these matches are going to take 20. What's the math? I guess 33 minutes each. Is that the? No, that's not the math. That is the math. 33 minutes each. So yes, we're going to talk about it, and let's get started with possible other matches / things that could happen. So we'll start from the top all the way to the bottom. Jake Fatu, maybe it's Fatu versus JC Mateo. Maybe that's the match to ultimately get a win under him, get some bloodline shenanigans to happen. I also am thinking heavily on a lot of the SmackDown stuff because I guess I should talk about Raw first because Raw ultimately just happened. You would imagine if there's a Raw match, they would announce it. I have Dominic Mysterio here. A lot of people think it's going to be Dom versus AJ Styles here, but I have to be honest with you. Don't think it will be because they hinted at it, but they still said he's injured. So you would think on a Raw they would say, no, he's not injured, even if he won't be injured by the time. So ultimately don't have him here. I have Braun Breaker here. Maybe it's a tag team match with Bronson Reed. Maybe it's instead Braun Breaker versus Jey Uso. Maybe it's something where they just get somebody on the card and something like that. I don't know. I just want to throw it in there because ultimately not another match. Now let's go to SmackDown things. I just said Fatu versus JC Mateo. Could we see a tag team match? Could we see Street Profits versus Wyatt 6 here? Could we see, maybe Wyatt 6 versus somebody else? I don't know, because I think there is a possibility of a tag team match being here because ultimately there's nothing else. But then we go to the bottom. The 2 that I think could be most likely is maybe a Damian Priest versus Aleister Black, even though I think that's a SummerSlam match in my opinion. I think those 2 could go at it at Saturday night's main event with maybe R-Truth interfering to make a triple threat for SummerSlam. And then I don't believe this will be the one because ultimately it doesn't make too much sense in my opinion. And that is Cena and Cody signing. Now, could there be the reason why I want to mention this is because if Cody and Cena have a contract signing, maybe Randy Orton gets involved, tears the contract, or gets mad about the contract. Maybe that's when Drew McIntyre gets involved as well. And then Randy Orton picks up the win to get into the triple threat. And then Drew McIntyre screws over Randy Orton actually at SummerSlam. I think there's a possibility there. I think they could do that where ultimately they have the contract signing with Randy Orton getting involved and then ultimately entering the Drew McIntyre Randy Orton match. I think that's a big possibility that I don't think a lot of people are thinking. But again, it's hard to say that they'll have that happen actually because to me, you would have to announce it before. And I think it would make sense to announce it before, but it's not happening. Not happening. But let's talk about matches most confident to least confident. So, most confident, Gunther versus Goldberg. I have a video coming out about potential with this video that I'm going to talk about more in depth on that in that video, but I'm still going to talk a little in here. I think that all these matches are unpredictable. I do think this one has the most predictable outcome because ultimately it's hard to believe Goldberg will beat Gunther, but I still think it's a huge possibility. Did I say Goldberg? I said Goldberg. I think it's a hard thought to see and to see it happen in the Big 25, but it's a real possibility with routes they could go with Seth Rollins and other people being involved. I think Gunther will likely win this match. I really do. And I think that's my pick for now, but I'm going to make a video on why I think there's a big possibility on why Goldberg will win. I think when you think about the future and how SummerSlam's going to go about, what is there for Gunther if he loses? What is there for Goldberg, if he loses, just retirement. That's fine. I think for Gunther, ultimately, he wins, maybe sets up an LA Knight versus Gunther at SummerSlam. There's a video that came out. Yeah, it's already out that who could he face at SummerSlam? Could it be, Goldberg winning and Gunther having a rematch? I don't know. I just have to believe that Gunther will win. And I think that's the best possibility to keep it going with him. Now, at the same time, Goldberg, do you really see him going out with a loss? I possibly, in my head, say probably not. And that's why I go with Goldberg in a sense. But I just think that it makes just too much sense to go Gunther here. And I think maybe they'll try and get Goldberg to get screwed by something so that ultimately Goldberg doesn't look like he just lost clean to Gunther. But I am going to go Gunther ultimately. Up next is LA Knight versus Seth Rollins. Now, the Go Home Raw says it could be Seth Rollins, but I am going to say it's LA Knight, and then I'll explain why. The Go Home Raw basically showed that LA Knight was on top, which isn't great. There's so many factors in this. I kind of wish this was the main event, even though it's not going to be, obviously. There's so many things that can happen. You're going to have Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed get involved. You're going to have, why am I blanking? You're going to have probably Punk get involved. Maybe Penta, Jey Uso, Sami Zayn's out for a while. I think what's going to happen and why I think LA Knight should win is because Seth Rollins can cash in at any time, and he's still Seth Rollins, and he still gets a championship opportunity. Ultimately, with him winning, and ultimately with him, just if he wins, what does it do for LA Knight? Just make him take a loss? Maybe there's a rematch at SummerSlam. If LA Knight wins, it could shoot him up to go against Gunther. It could shoot him going against another main title, maybe something else like that. I think just Seth Rollins loses is a big possibility, and there's a big potential Seth Rollins tries to cash in the Goldberg-Gunther fight if Goldberg would win. So I don't think it's bad for Seth Rollins to take a loss. What I do believe could really happen is like Braun comes out, then Penta comes out, Bronson comes out, then maybe Jay comes out. Maybe Seth is about to go after him, then maybe Roman helps, because I think ultimately Roman needs to be on the SummerSlam card for this 2-night event. It kind of has to be. Just having him just show up and return at SummerSlam is kind of wishy-washy in my opinion. Maybe he shows up to Raws after. But I just believe that maybe Punk gets involved. Maybe, Roman gets involved. And then we have LA Knight winning. Just one of those two. I kind of see Roman more to have it being Roman and Seth. But maybe Roman and Seth is the WrestleMania play in the future. So maybe it is going to be Punk versus Seth. But I want that match to happen with a championship. So we'll see on that. But I really do believe ultimately, or maybe it's Seth versus Punk and then LA Knight versus Gunther because LA Knight's going to win. LA Knight wins the title and then Seth cashes in there. Like that could happen as well. Or you could go Roman versus Seth. Seth loses. And then Punk versus Gunther. Gunther wins the, or Gunther loses to Punk. And then you have Seth winning against Punk. Another possibility. I just ultimately believe it has to be LA Knight. It just has to be LA Knight. Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre, I am so 50-50 on it. It's maybe because I think that this match is just going to be redone at SummerSlam. And to be honest with you, I said Randy Orton, I said Drew McIntyre. The person I'm going with is going to be Drew McIntyre. Here's why. I think Drew McIntyre taking these losses is kind of bad when he just came back and lost against Damian Priest. I think Drew McIntyre has to start getting these wins on his belt and getting under his belt. I think Randy Orton, his story arc should be that he keeps losing. I think Randy Orton nonstop losing, cracks his head and says, I could have, and then ultimately we get a heel Randy Orton or just a destructive Randy Orton, which we're starting to get. I think that's where I'm kind of at with this whole Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre kind of feud. I think Drew McIntyre needs to get the win, and if it's not, maybe it's a DQ in some sense, and then ultimately it's a rematch at SummerSlam with maybe a stipulation. I just don't see Randy. I just think that If Randy Orton would beat Drew McIntyre, then maybe Drew McIntyre makes his life hell entering SummerSlam where they go again. Or it's Drew winning, he's boasting, and then RKO out of nowhere, Randy Orton wants his get back, and then he goes back to the feud again, and then Randy Orton wins there. I just think ultimately Drew McIntyre is coming back. It makes Drew McIntyre look stronger, and Randy Orton's whole persona and whole thing should be he's taking losses. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.